Hi, I'm Chris from CodeReviewVideos.com, and in this video I want to show you a possible or a couple of possible solutions to this problem. So we click login, we head in and we log in as our user, and that's all good. We should get logged in. From a previous video we go to an alternative login page, which is fine, but the problem is if we now head back to login, we are still logged in but we still see the sign-in form. So the idea would be that instead of seeing the sign-in form, if we're logged in and we head to the /login, we just get redirected back to our home page or some page that you control. That's the idea. Now there's potentially two ways to solve this. In fact, there's potentially probably multiple ways of solving this. I'm going to show you two. One is better than the other in my opinion. If you know of a better way, then by all means please leave a comment. I'm always open to improving my development practices. So the first way I'm going to show you is to override the default FOSUserBundle controller, and the second way is going to be using a kernel event. So that's a little bit more confusing, I suppose, or it's a little bit more in depth into Symfony, sort of the life cycle of a request to response. So yeah, to begin with, I'm just on the FOSUserBundle documentation. They've got a section on, or an entire sort of documentation page on overriding controllers. Part of that is we can override the FOSUserBundle and then declare our own controllers and so on and so forth. It's a little bit more in depth than what we've covered so far, so I'm going to get started as there's quite a lot to cover. The idea is I'm going to generate a new bundle, or I'm going to create a new bundle. I'm just going to call it Chris User Bundle, and then I'm going to set this up as though it was a Symfony bundle, because it is a Symfony bundle, so that's why I'm setting it up. Chris User Bundle, and I need to just rename some of these things here. Chris User Bundle, and also that one, Chris User Bundle. Now don't worry if you've never done this before. The modern sort of best practices is that you generally don't do new bundles anymore. You just stick everything in that bundle unless things are getting a bit into sort of the bigger range of larger projects, I suppose. But anyway, the idea is that this bundle is going to be a child of a child of FOSUserBundle. So this will allow us now, once I've actually stuck this into app kernel, so I'll go in here, say new Chris bundle, Chris User Bundle. All good. That bundle should now be enabled. If we head back over here, just give that a refresh, make sure, yep, all still loads, so we didn't blow anything up at this stage. The idea is that now that we extend that bundle, or we're a child of it, we can override certain parts of it. So I'm going to create a controller, and the controller is going to override the Friends of Symfony User Bundle controller security controller. So when we log in, that's the controller that we're actually hitting. I'm not going to override it as such. I'm going to extend it, because what I'm going to do, not that one, I don't want that one. I want to go into here. I want to create a new file called security controller, which is exactly what the other one's called. So the base one is currently called security controller inside FOSUserBundle. I'm creating a controller called security controller inside my child bundle. So Symfony is going to look at this one over the other one. So this one is going to get called first, and so that allows us to override what's in the other one. I'm not going to override it as such. I'm going to extend it, as I say. So I'm going to say namespace in this instance is Chris User Bundle controller. I'm going to need to use their security controller. Is that right? FOSUserBundle controller as base controller. So I'm going to extend their controller. That's why I'm using their controller. Because as you'll see in a sec, I'm going to call their controller after I've done the thing that I want to do. So I'm going to call mine again security controller and extends base controller, which is all good. So they've got an action called, silly thing, they've got an action called login action, and that's exactly what I want in mine, because I want mine to basically wrap around theirs. It's kind of like a decorator, I suppose. So just make sure we've got all the right injections set up and that. So then at the end of this, what I want to do is really just return a call to the parent login action, and I need to pass in the request. So I'm just really wrapping their request, and if, in fact, let's not do an if, let's just do an exit, just to prove that this is working. So the idea is now when we try and load up the /login, then it should blow up, all being well, which it does. Okay, but I only really want it to blow up if I'm logged in. So if I'm not logged in, I don't want anything to happen really. So if I do a search for Symfony 2.6 security context, I think is the best way of finding it. So there was a blog post which sort of explains what I'm about to explain a little bit better. And this is, if you're sort of following along, then this may affect you depending on which version of Symfony you're using. So there's a couple of changes really moving forwards, and the main one is how we get access to a user, and it's now through token storage as opposed through the context. I believe the reason that they did that is that the concept of checking whether you were who you were, and also just they've separated the two, basically the two being the token storage and whether you're authorized. So being able to get the user and being able to check whether things are authorized with the current user were two things that shouldn't have really have been quite so tightly bound together. So I believe they've separated them out, something along those lines anyway. So we know that we're going to be at this point because we've just checked via that exit. Now, if when we get the user, we're not logged in, perhaps what we should do is just throw a dump in there. This shouldn't really do anything at this point, but it should show us what that user object is going to be, which then will allow us to sort of make our code react accordingly. So we've got the dump statement, and we can see we're actually logged in, so we've got a user object. So really what we can say is if our user is not an instance, if this object that represents user is not an instance of FOSUser, then we want to show the form, and if it is, then we don't. So what we'll do is we'll say if user instance of user, so that's our FOSUserBundle model, and the reason we're using that as opposed to our app bundle entity model, our app bundle entity user, is this one extends base user, and in theory anything that, see, we're making quite a big assumption here about the implementation, that our users are always going to be instances of FOSUserBundle, the FOSUserBundle model basically. So that kind of ties us into using FOSUserBundle, so it's a concern that you have to be aware of. However, the likelihood of you suddenly changing from FOSUserBundle is slim. So in my opinion, it's slim. So I'm okay with this. And what we're saying is if this user is an instance of user, so we are logged in, then instead we want to say return, return new redirect response, perhaps something like this. There might be a nicer way of doing this. I'm just trying to think of it off the top of my head. So this generate URL to a root. Our root, I think, is just home page. So if we're logged in, then redirect us to the home page. Otherwise, actually go ahead and show us the login. This should work, I think, hopefully. So yeah, we got logged. So we just got redirected back to our home page because we are logged in. So if we go to /login again, yep, we're getting dropped back out. And if we log out and go to login, all being well, we can log back in because that's getting passed through. And so, yep, that's one potential solution to this problem. However, we've extended the FOSUserBundle to do this. So it's a little bit tying us to various bits and pieces. So let's have a look at potentially a better way of doing this.